Setzinger, Robert with Ludor Scalmanini. These are, and Barbara Dalgish too with Ludor. These are the consulting firms that are working with us on developing the management zone plans. So next slide, please. Okay, Lydia is going to go over a few of the etiquette for this Zoom meeting. So Lydia.
Thank you, Perry. Good afternoon, everybody. So just a couple of guidelines here related to the meeting. So if you wouldn't mind looking at your name in the participant list, and if your name comes up as a phone number, if you wouldn't mind taking the opportunity to rename yourself so that we can identify you and take record of the folks that attend the meeting today, that would be fantastic. If you're having issues with renaming yourself, if you wouldn't mind sending me an email, my email address is up on the slide here, to let me know that you are in the meeting, or you can contact me through the chat to let me know and I can rename you. We ask that everybody please mute themselves during the meeting unless you are recognized to speak. This will help cut down on any background noise. We will stop the presentation at two places to give you an opportunity to ask questions approximately halfway through the presentation, then again at the end. If you have any questions during that Q&A period, we ask that you ask those questions in one of two ways. Either you can use the raise your hand icon, and once you are recognized, you can verbally unmute yourself and verbally ask the question, or alternatively, you can type your question into the chat and I will read the questions aloud. If you're having any technical issues during the meeting, please let me know via the chat or one of the other hosts, and we will do our best to provide you assistance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lydia. You can go to the next slide, please. So what you have in front of you are 10 questions that we're going to answer through this presentation. And I'm not going to read them each. You can glance at them here while I give you a little short elevator speech. For some of you, especially that are new to this program, really in a nutshell, what this is all about is nitrate is being found above the drinking water standard in parts of the Modesto and Turlock groundwater basins. There's been a recent change in state regulations that mandate that those industries who have nitrate in their discharges, including ag, cities, industry, need to cooperatively come together and develop a plan, a very massive, extensive plan to identify residences in the two basins impacted by high nitrate in their drinking water wells. You know, this plan also has to outline strategies to provide access to safe drinking water for affected residences. And this might include bottled water delivery, neighborhood bottle filling stations, or other ways to accomplish that goal. So today's one step in developing that plan, as you will be hearing about throughout this presentation. So next slide. So in the introduction, you saw our name. For those of you who are new, again, the Valley Water Collaborative is a new nonprofit that was formed expressly to implement the nitrate management plan, or the nitrate management zones that have been created in the regulation. And they're intended to address nitrate contamination in groundwater that's used for drinking water. And we're working with others in the area to improve nitrate water quality, groundwater quality in the future. And this is working with all the industries that, as I mentioned, that have nitrates in their discharge. And then we want to work with the communities too. This program is directed at the communities, both large and small, to ensure that there's safe drinking water available as soon as possible. And our group has a mission, as you see here, and then summarize is to provide safe drinking water for residents and engage in activities to protect and enhance the quality of groundwater used for drinking water in the region. So next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about this new nitrate control program. That's the official name that the state water board, regional water boards have adopted, and it's intended to address this impact of nitrate on drinking water. And most, or if not all, there's some surface water used for drinking water, but most communities in the Modesto-Turlock basins rely on groundwater. And it's becoming apparent that some of these areas can't rely on the drinking water to be safe and with nitrate levels to be at the drinking water standard. And we're working on a plan. As I mentioned, you're going to hear a lot about the plan, but we're working on a plan that will include long and short and long-term solutions to these nitrate problems. Next slide. So why be concerned about nitrate? Drinking water obtained from groundwater that enters our home especially through a domestic private well may require action if impacted by nitrate. If a residence is on a public water system, by and large, they're delivering water that does not have nitrate above the drinking water standards. In fact, they are under strict regulations to not do so. There may be, and we haven't found them yet, but there may be small communities that have public water supply wells that may have nitrates. But most of our main cities, Modesto, Ceres, Turlock, Houston, all of these cities are delivering water that does not have nitrates. But if you are on a private domestic well, that may not be the case. And the only way to really find that out is the owner has to test that water to determine if there's in fact nitrates in that water. And if you are the owner of that well, it's appropriate, it's important to take action to address the nitrate before the water is used for drinking, especially when it's above the drinking water standard. Okay, next slide. So what is nitrate? It's a contaminant that can make drinking water unsafe when it's above levels set by the government. You can't smell it, taste it, see it. The only way you can find out where the amount that's in there is by testing the water. And nitrate comes from a number of sources, some natural occurring, but in industry and cities, it's from fertilizers applied to crops, manure from animal agriculture. Septic tanks can also contribute nitrates if they are located next to a well system. And the rain and irrigation water can carry that nitrate through the soil profile down into our aquifers. And the government has set limits. In fact, the International World Health Organization has a limit for drinking water that matches what we have in the US. And it's measured as milligrams per liter, but the number is 10 milligrams per liter. Nitrate is nitrogen. So next slide. So how does that nitrate get into the wells or into the groundwater? And groundwater, as many of you know, is produced from these water-bearing sands and gravels beneath the feet, down anywhere from 30 feet to hundreds of feet below the surface. And it's important when wells are put in that they have a good protective seal on the top that protects it from any intrusion from around that immediate area of the wellhead. And you can see this diagram here on the side in the middle that shows where this how a pump is typically situated, where the pumping bowls are located. That's the mechanism that pushes the water up into the surface, as well as screens. And proper well construction is very important for preventing this contamination. And unfortunately, some of our older wells were not prepared or not developed using the latest technology. So there is a potential with an old small well for there to be intrusion from the surface into that well casing, around the well casing and down to the aquifer, and actually into the well that's being used to supply drinking water. So next slide. So I'm going to just pause here before we get into the program definition and ask if there's any questions. And Lydia, I'll have you watch for hands raised or for the chat function to see if there are any clarifying questions needed at this point.
Perry, I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions in the chat.
Okay, good. Well, we'll carry on then. And next slide, please. And so again, I'll introduce Richard Meyerhoff, who will be continuing the presentation to talk about the nitrate control program.
All right, thank you, Perry. So as Perry's already talked about, we have some new regulations that have been adopted in the Central Valley region of California, the purpose of which is to address 3 key goals over a multi-year period. And first and foremost is to deal with the safe drinking water issue that's been described already because of potentially high levels of nitrate in groundwater. Second is to reduce nitrate impacts in the future so that we don't have further impacts to groundwater as we move forward. And then we're reasonable, feasible, and practicable. That's good government language for saying where we can restore groundwater's quality so that water that's currently impacted by high nitrate improves its quality. To implement this in this area, and that's why we're having this meeting in the Modesto-Turlock area, is that we are forming, or the Valley Water Collaborative is forming, the Modesto-Turlock Management Zone. This is an option under the nitrate control program as a mechanism to manage nitrate going forward into the future. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons to form a management zone is it provides some opportunities for various entities, both those who might be discharging nitrate or those that use water or those who drink water, to all work collaboratively together to solve the problem in the local area. So first and foremost, the benefit of working together is that we work collaboratively to bring safe drinking water into the community. For those who are actually ultimately responsible for managing nitrate, the dischargers, they can work together and they can share the cost of nitrate management, which is useful because it becomes a more effective program over time. Also, we get in a management zone approach, instead of having a solution that might work 100 miles or 200 miles away, you focus on solutions that work for your particular area. So we will be looking to identify a program or establish a program that is focused and tailored to the Modesto-Turlock area. That way we work with you locally to solve the problem. Next slide. So who needs to be involved? Well, as I indicated, it's really everybody you can think of, but let's break it down into, first and foremost, there are those who are required to address nitrate concerns in the Central Valley. And the first 3 bullets here, the growers, the growers who are actually the farmers in the Central Valley who are permitted to work under a general order under the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. They need to be involved. The dairies, feedlots, poultry farms, those that operate under what we call a general order to allow their discharge, they will be participating. And then we also seek individual dischargers. This would be like a wastewater treatment facility or a food processor or a winery that has a permit from the state to discharge nitrate that have various responsibilities with regards to the quality management of water. And so we seek to have them participate to the extent that they can. And finally, the public. The purpose of the program, or one of the intents of the program, is to include the public, the community, in deciding how to best address safe drinking water issues moving forward. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn here to Barb Dogish with Ludor Scalmanini, who is going to talk briefly about where drinking water is affected in the area.
Thanks, Richard. So in order to understand what the nitrate levels are in our area, we have to tap into several data sources to find this information. So some of these sources are publicly available to anyone by just going to an appropriate website, and other data has to be requested. So all of the county data, for example, were requested specifically for this project. And the list of data sources is shown here on the left-hand side of your screen. And the map on the right shows where all of the wells that these data sources provided information for are located. So the majority of the wells with nitrate data came from the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program and are the olive brownish green color of dots on the map. So this map is showing all of the groundwater wells that have nitrate data in this area. There's quite a few, but as you can see, as you get closer to the foothills on the eastern side of both of the subbasin boundary areas, there aren't as many wells with information. Next slide, please. So although the nitrate control program is mostly focused on recent nitrate conditions occurring in the upper part of the aquifer, we don't always have recent data that can be used to give us a good picture of what the nitrate conditions are across the entire area. So in order to identify areas potentially affected by nitrate, we've gathered all of the available well data using the sources that you saw on the previous slide. And so the map on the right illustrates the maximum measured nitrate concentration in all wells over their entire period of record. So this contains groundwater testing that goes way back to 1943 until present. So dots on the map that are red or orange are considered to have elevated nitrate concentrations. So wells that are in red, so the red dots shown on the map, indicate that a well has tested above the safe level, or the drinking water maximum contaminant level that Perry mentioned, which was 10 milligrams per liter as nitrogen. So this map gives a picture of potential areas where nitrate has been and may currently still be a problem. The management zone is currently taking all of this groundwater nitrate data to locate areas and identify areas where unsafe levels of nitrate exist in drinking water. So we're also working to locate domestic wells that might exist in areas with potentially unsafe nitrate levels to determine who is impacted by these nitrate contamination areas. So additionally, we're also identifying water systems that treat for nitrate in the area. I think, Richard, I'll pass it back to you.
Hey, thank you, Barb. Next slide, Grace. Okay, so as Barb just identified, we're trying to, through various analyses, identify where are the key areas that we need to focus our efforts to ensure that. And one of the ways we'll take that information, we will use it along with working with you, the public, to develop what is called an early action plan. That is one of the nitrate program requirements, is to develop such a plan so that there is a plan and a schedule and a process for actually making sure that residents do have safe drinking water in the future. As part of the development of that plan, we'll be looking for what we call short-term solutions to address any drinking water concerns. And we will be coming back actually in future meetings to talk about some of those in more detail, but the types of short-term solutions, or sometimes we call it replacement water programs, is to use some tools such as establishing free, centrally located filling stations that provide clean water. These are facilities in which somebody can drive up to and fill up their bottles with water at no cost to them. The filling station is actually linked to a public water supply system that is compliant with the regulations. We might have situations where we need to implement a bottled water program where you can participate with the program and receive bottled water under certain conditions or circumstances. This program will also have an element about testing your own private well to see if you have actually the concerns about drinking water in your own well. And we'll talk more about that moving forward. And there may be other things that will come up as we move through the program and work with you and develop the early action plan. And these are short-term solutions. Ultimately, the nitrate control program requires that all these areas, including this management zone that we're developing, develop long-term solutions that solve the problem, not just work the problem, but actually solve the problem in the future. Next slide. So how can you participate? Well, there are many different ways. And so one way is simply data. You saw the map a few minutes ago where the team has been pulling together what's available out there with what we know of in terms of well data. If you have well data, for example, or know someone who does and have had your well tested for nitrate and want to share that information, we certainly would be happy to include that in our analysis. We'll be seeking input as we develop the management zone. As I just mentioned, this early action plan, we want to work with you in the development of that, so we tailor it to this particular area and it meets the needs of this community. And we'll also be providing opportunities in the future if you're really into reading documents and providing comments and making sure we heard you. We will have those opportunities down the road as well. We ask you tell your neighbors about the project. One of the challenges we face, and it's a little more difficult in the current situation with virtual meetings, is actually reaching out to the people that we would like to be connected to. And so if you know someone that might be interested in this project, we'd appreciate you sharing what we're talking about tonight. And the best way to stay in touch is to sign up at the website that's been established for the Valley Water Collaborative. The link is shown on the screen, and you can go to that link and you can put in your name and your email and be kept informed about upcoming meetings like this, as well as other things as they are developed. Next slide. We will be having additional meetings, as I've mentioned. We anticipate our next meeting will be in probably about a month in December. And during that meeting, we will talk a lot more about replacement water options that might be considered in this area, and we will be seeking your input during that meeting. We then anticipate another meeting in the January timeframe, could be February, but more likely January, where we actually come to you with draft proposals to share with you what we're putting into the early action plan and get your reaction to what we have been preparing. Then, of course, as I've mentioned, there's opportunity if you're really into reading documentary when we'll be seeking that input. And then it doesn't stop with the project that we're doing now. It will continue on for many years as the management zone actually implements the early action plan. So not just develop it, but actually implements the plan, which will begin in spring of 2021. There'll be plenty of opportunities to stay involved and participate as that plan unfolds. Again, the best way to stay involved is to sign up to receive program updates at the website of the Valley Water Collaborative. And next slide. And Perry, I think this is where I'm supposed to turn it back to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, what the slide shows here is a summary of a very aggressive time frame. We have deliverables, a very important deliverable due, you see on the far right-hand side, of March 8th. And this is going to include the plan, the preliminary management zone proposal and early action plan that Richard talked about. And with part of a very big part of that is to get community local feedback on that plan as it's developed. It's going to be a couple of months, January, February, we'll have to review and get comments on that. As Richard mentioned, also we'll have community meetings using this format apparently now for the next 3 months until that plan is submitted. And we're also holding kind of parallel meetings with what we call the stakeholders. This includes entities, interested entities that are certainly related to the organization, or the entities that are in this Valley Water Collaborative. And that includes water districts and irrigation districts, the farm bureaus, other ag and community organizations. So we want a little bit deeper dive into the regulation. And if you go to our website and you're really interested in being involved in those, you can participate in both this structure, the community meetings, and in the stakeholder meetings if you desire. And then next slide. And rather than say we're all done in March, it really isn't. Next year, 2021 is going to be very busy. So we submit that plan on March 8th to the Regional Water Board. They then release that to the public where they will take in comments on the submittal that we put in March. However, even before the regional board has made a decision on that plan, we begin our activities on the early action plan, and that's in March 2021. And these are very tentative fall and winter dates, but we anticipate next fall, probably about a year from now, maybe a little sooner, we're going to be making this well testing available. And then if things go as we anticipate, it could be, again, about a year from now, maybe a little later, that we'll begin having these water delivery options available. But the planning process is not over. That preliminary management plan, we will get comments back that we will then need to modify the plan and submit in the winter of 2021. And then we have to come up with what's called the implementation plan. That's the long-term program that will cover permanent drinking water solutions. Because as the statute says, and we all believe, bottled water is not a permanent solution for all. It may be in rare instances that's the best solution, but in the eyes of many in the public and the regulators, we really need to find long-term solutions that include either treatment, connection to existing systems, or something that you would consider a long-term solution to the plan. Or to the problem, sorry. So that gives you an overview. We've got a very busy next couple of years that you're going to hear a lot about what we're doing in this program. So one more slide, and then we'll be thinking about some questions. You can go to the chat too if you've got some in mind. So here's where this information is going to be available. And the presentation that we just covered, as well as one that we gave to the stakeholders, will be posted on our website. There's also some really good information, general overview information about the nitrate control program from an entity called the CV Salinity Coalition. It's an organization that has been involved in developing this regulation change. There's a lot of good background information, particularly on the nitrate control program. See my email there. You can contact me, go to our website. It's still under construction, but it does have information and sign up availability for those who want to continue staying on our mailing list. And as of now, we're planning to have the next community outreach meeting December, probably the first week in December. We will send an announcement out. If you received one, you'll get another one again. And we encourage you to pass around our address and let folks you think might be interested in this to check in. And at that meeting, we will be in the early development phase of these plans. So we'll give you an idea of what's developing, what's been put together to date in early December. So we encourage you to participate, and we'll try to do the best to be economical with your time as we provide the information to you. So that is about it for our presentation today. I can go to the next slide. We certainly would welcome any questions or comments, or I see a few names on the screen who've been involved in this. If you want to elaborate on any points you think are appropriate, feel free to raise your hand and weigh in on this important issue.
Perry, there are no questions or raised hands at this time.
Well, Richard and Barbara, we must have covered it pretty well then.
Thomas Helm, you have a question? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, hello. Sorry, I was trying to get my Zoom working on the screen right. Yeah, just a couple of questions. I'm from Valley Improvement Projects. We're a local environmental justice advocacy group. Been doing most of our work around air quality, but like to consider ourselves advocates for anything affecting environmental justice communities, including water quality. I just had a couple of questions of my own curiosity. Is the two basins that make up the zone, is that basically covering all of Stanislaus County? Is there anything more than Stanislaus or left out of Stanislaus that's not covered by the management zone?
Yes, so the basin, the Modesto Basin and the Turlock Basin, these are designated by the Department of Water Resources. On the western border, the edge of the basin is the river, the San Joaquin River. So those areas west of the San Joaquin River are in Richard, Delta Mendota, I believe it's called the Delta Mendota Basin.
I'd have to look, Perry, to be sure.
Yeah, it is a separate basin. And then as you go to the east, the areas in the mountains are typically in what are called confined aquifers. So they're not considered to be in these basins that we will be addressing. And then as far as Stanislaus, well, it actually rolls into Merced County a little bit down in the Turlock Basin. So it's a combination of the Modesto and Turlock Basin. And as the plans are going to be developed, it is not going to be one plan for both basins. Each basin will be specific to the needs and the characteristics of those basins. The Valley Water Collaborative was formed to try to provide some economies of scale in the way we administer these programs. So even though we as an organization will be submitting one document, there will be Turlock Plan and Modesto Plan that has details specific to those, to the water quality issues, the population, the cities, etc. But Thomas, I would appreciate staying involved. I'm sure we could take advantage, and you could take advantage of our contacts to get the word out on this program. So appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, I definitely want to learn. I've already learned a lot and would like to learn more, and how, we can help get the word out and get community members involved in giving their input. I had a few more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
I know I'm the only one asking, so I don't want to hold everybody up, but like I said, I really do want to learn more. So there were, you mentioned like the different causes of the nitrate discharges. Do we have, or does somebody have the best data on what is maybe the main sources? Like is there one particular thing or another that's the cause of most of it? Or is everything kind of need to be looked at from the beginning?
Well, there's two ways to look at it, and then I'll ask Richard to elaborate too. The two ways to look at it. The maps that you see are the result of probably 100 to 120 years of human activity. Groundwater has a very long memory, so it's not really something in the recent past that's caused us to be in the place that we are at. But as I mentioned early on, the nitrates are naturally occurring when vegetation breaks down. It could leach nitrates into groundwater. But the biggest users of nitrogen-based fertilizers, of course, are agriculture. Dairies have dairies, poultry, any animal operations do have waste manure that has the potential, once it breaks down into nitrates, to move into groundwater. Wastewater treatment plants, as you treat sewage, there are nitrates that are remnants of that. So there's a lot of sources. There's not really a one source is why we're here. And that's why this organization, Valley Water Collaborative, has all the entities that have the potential or have nitrates in their treatment or discharge facilities to impact groundwater. So we're the ones that are all working on this issue.
And I would add one additional thing to think about, Thomas, moving forward, is that the deliverables right now is a management zone proposal. So we're focused on forming the management zone and doing what's necessary to do that. But down the road, as that slide with the schedule showed, we need to look at permanent solutions. And we also need to address the other nitrate management goals, which is do no more harm, no longer degrade water quality, and then hopefully improve water quality going forward. There's a plan that has to be developed around those themes, and that's called the Management Zone Implementation Plan, which will probably be due around sometime in 2022. And that plan, if you think about the need to reduce sources of nitrate, you need to identify what are the key sources now. So we have legacy nitrate, but we also want to eliminate sources now or reduce them such that they are no longer impacting groundwater. And now we need to look at all sources. And so that plan will be looking at how do we keep from degrading further going forward. So I would even include septic systems in that. We need to understand impacting groundwater. What do we need to do about that? So it'll be pretty comprehensive in the analysis at that point.
Yeah, so I guess what I was asking, if anybody knows, or if there's a place to find out, like if one thing in particular is the cause of 75% of the discharge, or if it's or that data is just not available, or it's mostly just the built up nitrates.
I don't know. I know there's been university studies valley-wide about areas where they've done that analysis, and it's very localized. What is impacting one area could certainly be different in another area. So there's typically not one answer. And it's, again, nitrogen use in agriculture in the last 5 years has come under regulation and oversight. So there's pretty intense reporting requirements and management practices that agriculture is now implementing based on that potential for our fertilizers to leach into groundwater. Same goes for the dairy industry. And wastewater, all the entities that I mentioned before are under very strict guidance from the Regional Water Board to minimize or eliminate those nitrate discharges.
Great, thanks. One more question if I can. I noticed on one of the slides that had the red and orange and yellow dots, it seemed like a lot of those dots would have been within the city water system. Is that city wells that have also tested for above the level of nitrate? Or was the map maybe wasn't zoomed in enough, but I was just curious if that was counting the city wells.
It could, yeah, sure, yeah. It would contain, that data set does contain public water supply wells. So city wells are included in that data set, but that's not to say that the red dots are only public water supplies. A lot of cases it's local domestic wells or ag wells also that make up those dots. So, and again, the map that I showed was historic, so that was not necessarily a snapshot of recent conditions. So part of what we're working on now is to look at more recent conditions and see if those red areas are still red, or if we actually, in fact, don't know what the conditions are. So there's some more refinement in the data grooming in order to answer some of the questions that the nitrate control program asks.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of maps, Thomas, that are developed out of this program. If you like maps, this is maps to go here, and both historical, current, and anticipated, and etc. So yeah, there's a lot of information out here.
Just so I'm clear too, this process doesn't involve if it's already on a city system, right? We're looking at, well, personal wells maybe for like a mobile home park or not already, or a small city, unincorporated city that has its own well, but not that's already hooked up to a larger city system.
Exactly.
Right?
Generally speaking, as I mentioned, the cities, they cannot deliver water for any extended period that are above the drinking water standard for any constituent, nitrate included. And we're going to, Richard, help me, or Barbara, I believe that we will have in this report the levels that are most recently reported in some sort of tabular form.
Yes, we'll be identifying any public water supply well that has tested above the MCL, and then indicate whether or not that public water system has the ability to treat. So if it has the capability to treat the water, we will note that. And if it's one of the smaller, mobile home or a gas station well that maybe does not have a treatment, capability on site, then we'll be able to note that as well.
And one thing, Thomas, that I'm hoping you can help us with, you hit it right on the nose. It's the individual wells and small systems. These are the people in the semi-rural areas that are going to be the focus of our outreach, and how to get inside their understanding of this issue is really going to be important for us over the next few months.
Great, thanks. Thanks for answering my questions and putting on the workshop.
Yeah, you're welcome.
A few things for Thomas also, a few extra points.
Okay, any other chat questions? I don't see any. And Lydia, any hands raised?
No hands raised, but Stephanie Hearn, did I hear that you had maybe a comment or a question you wanted to add?
Yes. If I was just going to let Thomas know that any public supply wells, they are required, especially for municipalities, to report to their consumers the levels of nitrate and all drinking water chemicals, or all drinking water contaminants, in a consumer confidence report. And so those are produced annually, and you would be able to find, if you look at any city water system, you could find them on their websites or on the state's Division of Drinking Water website. So if you had concerns with the city wells, that would already be published information on what the water quality is that they're supplying to you.
Great, thank you for that.
Well, I thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope to see you in December at our next update.